everyone. Welcome to our art show, Curious Encounters and Things I Don't Fully Understand. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. I have always felt inspired after going to a great art exhibition or walking through an artist studio. Walking through these rooms, I often wonder, what am I doing here? I should be at home covering myself with paint and writing poems on canvas. It is art's addictive nature which keeps it pulsing through communities and inspiring people to create every day. I sincerely hope that someone will leave here today with a renewed sense of motivation for their own art or craft. I'm very pleased to see this wonderful art community in Gwangju, and I'm grateful to be here today. So, our exhibition is named Curious Encounters and Things I Don't Fully Understand, as you know. The art I have created is part of what I like to call a cabinet of curiosity. This is an image of a cabinet of curiosity. In Renaissance Europe, a cabinet of curiosity was a term coined to describe a collection of objects that could not be classified in a field of study. Today, we would classify these objects as belonging to archaeology, religion, art, or natural history. I'll show you a couple more pictures. These rooms were also known as Wunderkammer or Wonder Rooms. Cabinets of curiosities would contribute to scientific advancement when images of their contents were published. A Wunderkammer was made up of grotesque oddities and cultural relics, natural history and classical painting. The cabinet of curiosity was seen as a microcosm of the entire world. Thus, the greatest cabinets belonged to the richest aristocrats and rulers. The cabinets contained a collection of fascinating objects, such as antlers, horns, tusks, tribal weapons, and skeletons. They would often mix facts and fiction and include the fantastical. One cabinet is known to include a mermaid's hand, a dragon's egg, and 2 feathers of a phoenix's tail. The cabinet was a precursor to the museum, and many famous museums today actually started off as a cabinet of curiosity. One famous example is the British Museum in London. I am personally inspired by the sense of wonder that the objects provide. Tusks, antlers, skulls, oil paintings, and tribal weapons. Don't you agree? As I began this process of art making, I wanted to literally recreate a cabinet of curiosity. So my first drawing was a skeleton drawing of Siamese twins. But my intentions completely changed as I put paint to paper and started to work with color. This was a major transition. I began to think of this collection as a Wunderkammer of myself, the wonder room of my mind. Similar to a cabinet of curiosity, I believe that art making is a microcosm of yourself, and your pieces come to represent the mysteries of your own world. I support art as a form of therapy, and I believe in its inherent ability to create wellness. I certainly know that when I am doing art, my thoughts become positive and my outlook becomes clear. Thus, my own psychological state fuels my art, and I often become my own subject, although I may surface as a crystal chief, a skeleton, or a deer skull. I have always been intrigued by the fact that my great-grandmother and my father are both artistically talented. I once stumbled upon a picture of a tree that my grandmother sketched. I then found one that my father sketched, and I barely had to open my own sketchbook to find a tree that I sketched. The similarities were striking. All the trees happen to be the same size. We all use short, squiggly marks to create leaves and branches. We use similar shading. Was this merely a coincidence, or a testimony to how the spirit and art can transcend time and become lost in future generations? I suppose that I use art to reconnect with this deep-rooted ancestral part of me. This is another example of how art is a microcosm of the self. My personal connection with nature is strong, and in these pieces, I wanted to recreate the moment when nature becomes a breathing entity and pulses through one's own body. The moment when wind whispers leaves in your ear and snow rages against your skin. The heart which beats in a tree and the animal that exists in a woman. I love to explore our intimate relationships with nature through imagery and color. My three favorite artists are Austrian Ian Aherne, Canadian Lauren Harris, and Spanish Pablo Picasso. My design for the watercolor, Saint Before a Mirror, which you can see back there, was heavily inspired by Picasso's Girl Before a Mirror. After I finished my painting, I struggled with whether this painting was authentically my own, because I borrowed so much from this image. But after talking with my friends and much thought, I realized that this piece is my own. I used my own original technique of combining watercolor and marker, and in fact, that piece was the first one I did of the series, so its success was pivotal in the creation of the other pieces. I love how the watercolor and pen looks like stained glass. In the future, I hope to create stained glass versions of these pieces. I think this is a good example of how artists feed off each other and art evolved based on a personal and historic response to the art. I wish to extend my psychologically fueled art perspective to the community. I believe that art at a community level stimulates personal growth and allows voices to be heard that wouldn't normally be given the opportunity. That concludes my talk. I hope that you leave today feeling a sense of wonder.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing our images today. My name is Nadine. I'm from Canada, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of the images that I've displayed in the show today. My oldest brother had a saying, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. In my large French-Canadian family, there is a certain slippage between truth and fiction that occurs in the telling of a story, and its function is more than for entertainment. These stories serve to instruct, to forebode, to amuse, and to orally document the events of our lives. They blend, they overwrite, and bleed into other narratives, and the result is something that is neither fact nor fiction, not entirely true or untrue. I'm fascinated with how these stories change and evolve, both gaining power and degrading with each iteration. It is both my interest in storytelling and the wild landscape of my family's rural home that inspired my illustration. I look to several continually surfacing tropes as the source of my imagery. One of the most prominent of these is called the Loup-garou. He is a wolf character who lives in the abandoned orchard near our home. The Loup-garou has appeared in many manifestations throughout my life, thanks to the brothers, uncles, aunties, etc., who have explained the universe to them. He is the one who stole your missing cherished item, the one who made off with your abandoned pet. He is a bad boyfriend, a prankster, and an omnipresent figure. And these ever-changing characters are a large source of my imagery in this work. But for me, they're also about the pleasure of drawing and marking things. My major subjects in university were printmaking and drawing, and I often combine elements from both spheres in a single image. From stencils to dry print, I can't seem to create an image without using both of these worlds in my images. The other set of works that you will see today are photography series. And in them, I'm thinking about memory and the process of memory as a similar way as storytelling. I think our memories are also a kind of narrative for the way in which each time we revisit a memory, it gains power with repetition. Certain elements are reinforced while other information is lost and degrades. My photographs mimic this process. They're establishing two images from my surroundings in rural BC, and I've taken photographs of these photographs. With each repetition, certain elements become exaggerated while others are suppressed. The resulting image is, again, neither fact nor fiction, neither true or untrue. Ultimately, the images degrade to complete blackness. I hope that you enjoy all of our works today. I leave it to Mr. Aherne to discuss his work. Thank you.
Hi. Whoa. This is me. I started with the working title of Things I Don't Fully Understand, and so everything I've come up with today really isn't conclusive. And if you can put me straight on any of them, I'd appreciate it. But okay. So first topic I started with was economics, and it's got a lot of notoriety the last couple of years. Kind of the world economy just fell apart, and everyone has noticed it. But economics is unbelievably complex, and it has a million variables. And when you think about it, it's amazing it doesn't fall apart more often. I was interested in the topic, and I read a book called The Shock Doctor by Naomi Klein, and it deals with corporate economies mostly, and international politics, economics, and focuses on corporations in particular. And we live in really a corporate economy, and in a corporate economy like ours, it isn't enough just to get by, or you can't make just enough money to keep the lights on. You have to make a lot of money. And one thing I took away from this book is that money as a physical object, not just assets that go up and down, cash has to be continuously moving. If it stays in one place for too long, it will decrease in value. If you have $100 today, you can if you can put it in the bank, but really that's just spending it on the bank. If you hold on to it for a year, you won't be able to buy as much in a year as you will today. If cash isn't continuously moving, it's decreasing in value. And I kind of compare that to this kind of idea that if the shark doesn't move forward, it dies. Even putting money in the bank actually is technically spending it. You're just unofficially investing in that bank, and the interest you get at the end of the year is just the dividend you would get with shares or any other thing you might invest in a corporate economy. Just as an experiment, all of my work is for sale, but I haven't put a price on it. You can just come up to me and just tell me how much it's worth. And I think it could be an interesting experiment. I want to know what people come up with. Next one is religion, another topic that I've done a lot of work with in the past. Basically, I can't remember how old I was when I realized that I was only Catholic because my mom is Catholic, and she was only Catholic because my grandmother is Catholic, and that seemed like a very arbitrary way to decide your faith. So, and also I was kind of, I suppose, I wasn't really buying into Catholicism anymore. It didn't really ring true with me, and I stopped believing in it. I started researching it as I stopped believing in it. It was kind of ironically losing my religion, maybe incredibly interested in religion and philosophy. But it's the same way if you find something, you stop looking for it. So if you don't have anything, you start searching in philosophy or different religions, theology, and I did that. So as an experiment, I wrote this story called The Orphanage. And it's about a little orphan called Joe who wants to find out what's waiting for him outside the orphanage. Nobody can tell him because once you leave, you can't come back. And I thought that was an interesting kind of analogy, kind of compared it to our world is a lot like an orphanage in terms of religion. You find yourself in this environment with no knowledge or understanding of a creator. And you just have this vague promise that at the end you get to meet your maker. And I thought that was kind of an apt parallel. Go with that. Alright, so we move on to that. This is quite a heavy one, alright. This is on reality. And came up with this image. And you can see it on the wall here. And it's just a series of sunset, and as the sunset, you also see this window of the sky gradually getting bluer and bluer. You could analyze it and say it's symbolic of with every sunset, the sun is going to rise the next day. But it's actually a complete illusion, and they're exactly the same image. The image on the left is exactly the same as the right. It's a complete optical illusion, and I started wondering, why is this actually happening? What is the science behind this? And I looked into the biology of vision and optical illusion. I actually started researching the idea of color. And this is actually the dictionary definition of color: the quality of objects or substances reflected light. And I started to realize that color, and not to confuse color with light, color has no physical qualities. It's just kind of a side effect of light. It doesn't have any weight, it doesn't have any temperature, it has no physical influence on the world. So what happens there? Color is a visual perceptual property. We perceive color when light hits your eye and your brain processes it in a way that's easy to understand. But it's entirely in your brain. Color doesn't physically exist. It's similar to any other illusion. You could, it occurs entirely in your brain. If there was no intelligent light, there would be no color. It sounds kind of strange to say it, but you could argue that color doesn't exist. If you imagine a story like if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? You could argue that it does. Sound does have physical influence. There's a sound that can break glass, for example. And if that sound goes off and nobody's around to hear it, the glass will still break. But in terms of color, you could argue that if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to see it, are the leaves green? Like I said, color occurs entirely in our brains. If nobody's around to look at something, it still exists. There's still trees and there's rocks and there's stars in the sky. But if nobody's actually looking at it, then the trees aren't green and the space isn't black. The sky isn't blue. It's entirely like the most blatant detail of every object we've seen is created in your brain. finally I came up with the idea of what is an artist. And the idea of what is art is pretty well known now. You can kind of get away with anything. You can call it art. We've actually reached a stage where no matter how good your argument is, if you claim something isn't art, you automatically look conservative and a bit ignorant. So you can kind of get away with what everything is art. It's an exhibition. I can look at it. But what I was interested in is what is an artist. And just an example, I used this a couple of months ago. I got into online Scrabble, and kind of at the end of it, I kind of realized that that kind of looks good. Like that could look good on the wall. And so I thought, okay, it's definitely art. It looks good on the wall. I enjoy looking at it. That's great. But why am I the artist? I didn't design this. This is a Scrabble board. It's about 50 years old. Somebody else designed it. I didn't print it. I got somebody in town, gave them the file, they printed it off and handed it back to me. And I didn't make half of these words. Some guy in Texas did. You know? So at what point did I become the artist? Why am I allowed to put my name on this? And it's interesting as well. Like somebody in Texas had a throwaway game of Scrabble 3 months ago, and now it's on a wall in Guangzhou. Somebody had a game in Goa, and it's in South Korea for some reason. They haven't thought about that game since, but it's still knocking around on some wall. Sorry, I haven't got on topic now. Like I said, why am I allowed to put my name on this? It's very controversial issue at the moment because intellectual property is a big topic. There's a lot of money. Copyright is really important in the news. But again, why am I the artist here? That's the question that I can't answer. If I say the thought experiment, if I tricked 10 people into creating a sculpture, a piece of art, without their knowledge, and I took those 10 pieces and I put it into an exhibition, what would I be able to call that my own? If I executed and planned this project, and they, without their knowledge, did all the work, am I the artist? So, I don't know. That's me. Thanks very much.